Well, good morning. This is Ian R. Crane, and it's the morning of Monday, the 30th of September, 2019. And sadly, autumn is very much with us. A lot of rain over the weekend. I know there's a lot of flooding, particularly on the railway lines up in East Lancashire. So I'm indoors at the moment. Anyway, I'm obviously 60% of the way through my tour. 5G, is it safe? I have to say the response so far has been absolutely fantastic. Numbers haven't been massive, average of about 60 or so people at each event. But the level of interest, the level of commitment, the level of desire to actually try to do something to prevent this abomination, untested abomination of 5G microwave frequencies being rolled out is definitely gaining pace. And interestingly, last week, Boris Johnson went to the UN. He delivered a rather late night presentation when there was hardly anybody in the chamber and probably even less actually watching. But nonetheless, he delivered an excellent dissertation on his concerns about the rapid rise of artificial intelligence and whether or not this technology was actually going to benefit humanity, or whether it was effectively the signaling the potential demise of humanity as artificial intelligence effectively takes over everything. Boris even making the observation that do we find ourselves increasingly in a situation where human interaction, where human involvement in decision making becomes a thing of the past? It's either computers say yes or computers say no. So I'm going to put a link to that UN presentation under this. But listen very carefully to what Boris is saying, because, of course, the other concern is that Boris is fulfilling one of the criteria that the ruling parasites believe they have to do if they want to pursue a particular agenda. And that is that they have to tell us what it is that they're planning. They don't have to tell us directly, but then by sharing it, by putting it out there, and then if there's no reaction, then they take that as acquiescence. So I think it's very important that people listen to what Boris has to say and then decide whether or not this is something that you can say, okay, Boris has got it, we can leave that to the government. Well, if you take that stance, then that's exactly what they want you to do. And of course, that is remarkably naive, and they will take it as acquiescence that they can roll this agenda out. So it's crucial that we build this groundswell of awareness of the risks of 5G, the total surveillance that it brings with it, not to mention, of course, the negative health impacts. And this Saturday, I went down to attend the radiation health event in London. And this was a truly remarkable day. The magnitude of the information was absolutely enormous. I have a whole notebook of notes. But this was organized by Brian Steen. And Brian is a former chief executive of a corporation who nearly 20 years ago discovered that he was electrosensitive and it was having horrendous impact on his quality of life. It took a while to diagnose, but once it was established that this was the trigger for his health issues, then he took steps to effectively protect himself by turning his house and his car and his office into Faraday cages. But for 20 years, he's been trying to raise awareness of the impact on people who are electrosensitive. Pretty much every other speaker during the course of the day, well, every other speaker basically was either an academic, a doctor, medical doctor, or a practicing scientist. And Brian Steen was ably assisted by Dr. Erica Mallory Blythe. Then we had Dr. Dimitris Panagopoulos from Greece, Professor Martin Paul, course, who will be familiar to anyone who is concerned about the 5G agenda. Professor Lennart Hardell from Sweden, Dr. Ron Meinig, I think he's not sure where he was from actually, Dr. Andrea Vornell, and then Dr. Peter Ornsange, and then Professor Deborah Davis, who came in via Skype from the US. I'm not a fan of Skype presentations at a conference, but I have to say that Deborah pulled it off absolutely brilliantly. And anyway, that was about it. So let me just make the observation that in the presentations that I've been taking around the country asking, 5G, is it safe? Let me tell you, I haven't even scratched the surface. This was an absolutely, truly outstanding event, and anyone who has any doubt about the science suggesting that we should not be in such a rush to roll out this technology should have been at this event. And of course, Public Health England were invited, but declined. And this is no surprise, because this is the attitude that the industry and the government take. They know that they could not actually win any debate. They have no moral high ground whatsoever. So what do? Refuse to engage. And that's exactly the case with Vodafone and Public Health England, who were both invited by a concerned group of local citizens in Manchester to participate in the 5G Is It Safe event at the Britannia Hotel in Manchester this coming Thursday. But no real surprise, last week they pulled out. We had implied that if they did participate, we would actually turn it into a debate rather than just a series of presentations. But once they did a little bit of research and discovered that the event was actually part of the 5G Is It Safe tour, they decided that they would not participate. And again, no surprise, because I think anybody who attends or has attended any of the 5G Is It Safe presentations so far would actually realize that, frankly, it would be like shooting fish in a barrel, because they have nothing. And the evidence that I present would literally wipe the floor with them. And so consequently, that's why they don't engage. And, our challenge is enormous, because we have maybe 6 months to build a groundswell against this phenomenal technology. But, the reality is that that technology brings with it massive negative health implications. And, sadly, many of the practitioners that I listened to at the weekend have been on this case for anything up to 20 years and not really gained a lot of traction. They've been out there on the fringes. But everything that they have basically been saying over 20 years, and obviously the more evidence that they've accumulated, particularly surrounding the negative impact on pre and post-natal birth, the impact on pregnant women, the impact on fertility, the fact that, now in Southeast Asia in particular, which has embraced this technology even more so than in the West, and we see fertility declining to the point where reproduction is now down below replacement levels. So reproduction's at about 73%, so at about 3/4 of what it really needs to be, just in terms of maintaining replacement. So it's not perhaps an exaggeration when 5G is labelled an extinction level event. But of course, don't expect the likes of controlled opposition, Extinction Rebellion, to ever be taking up the cause, because Extinction Rebellion has of course been created to divert attention, to distract, and to usurp genuine community activism. And as much as I regret to say it, whilst there are some very, very good people who have unfortunately aligned themselves with Extinction Rebellion, there is nothing benign, nothing about Extinction Rebellion that has the broader interests of humanity at heart. It is effectively a front for the corporations who are looking to bring about change for their benefit, the new Green Deal. And of course, Greta has said that the older generation have stolen her dreams. Well, the younger generation are on the brink of stealing the pensions of those who have worked much of their lives to try to enjoy some retirement in their twilight years. Yet, of course, retirement is intended to be a thing of the past because it is not conducive with total control and full spectrum dominance to have a demographic that is aware of what's occurring and in addition has time and a degree of financial independence. So the goal is to eradicate the retiree. And I don't think we're too many years away from those who have aligned themselves to this false call of Extinction Rebellion, that they'll be calling for euthanasia for all those who are not making a direct contribution to the corporatocracy, and all those who refuse to adhere to the dogma of the few. And unfortunately, dogma, of course, rules the day. And what is coming next? Well, we've been also concerned about this for some time, but today on page 4 of the Daily Mail, the title of the headline here, parents may be forced to give children vaccinations. Well, this is being driven by yet another intellectual pygmy in Parliament, Matt Hancock. Of course, he was briefly responsible for energy in a previous government, where he was pushing the fracking agenda. And it seems that he's done as much research on vaccinations as he did on fracking. And once again, we have a classic situation where politicians really can't survive now in the political arena if they retain any capacity and capability for independent thought. They simply are expected to regurgitate the briefing notes that come out of central office, and those briefing notes come directly from the lobbyists, the corporate lobbyists, who effectively throw money, favours and promises of sinecure, well-paid, extremely well-paid, sinecure jobs once they leave parliamentary office. So, Matt Hancock apparently has alluded to the prospect of children not being able to enter school if they haven't had their vaccinations. Meanwhile, of course, the Labour Party wants to abolish private schooling. So between the Tories and the Labour Party, one wants to foist forced vaccinations on the public, so much so that the children can't go to school, which would mean that the only way in which parents could school their children is homeschool or private school. And then Labour wanting to do away with private schooling limits it to homeschooling. And guess what happened in California? Well, eventually they made it illegal to homeschool unless the parents had a teaching qualification. And that was all dreamed up by the lobbyists from the pharmaceutical industry to push vaccinations. And of course, over the weekend, we saw in numerous of the weekend papers, double-page spreads pushing for adults to be given the HPV vaccine, the human papillomavirus vaccine. And these are all wonderful revenue streams for the pharmaceutical industry. And of course, the pharmaceutical industry readily acknowledges that it's not in the business of creating health, because there's no money in health, but there is a shed load of money in sickness, and obviously a guaranteed bonanza of bonuses for senior executives and shareholders as these revenue streams just go astronomical. But meanwhile, of course, the biggest industry in the world will very soon be that of data and trawling data. And right now, data gathering is a bigger industry than the pharmaceutical industry. It's a bigger industry than the hydrocarbons industry. I think the only industry which data has yet to quite overhaul is finance, but it's almost there. And this is exactly what Boris was warning, or was he, about at his presentation at the UN. So what can one say? The challenge is very much on us, the collective we, to try to avoid this dystopian nightmare that's being foisted upon humanity by compliant politicians on behalf of the corporatist lobbyists. So this week the 5G tour continues. I'm in South Yorkshire in Hull tonight at the Royal Britannia Hotel in Hull. Tomorrow night in Sheffield at Sheffield Hallam University at the city centre campus. Then on Wednesday I shall be in Leeds at the Shine Business Centre, and both the Sheffield events and the Leeds events are right opposite the main train stations there. Then on Thursday we're in Manchester, and Manchester is at the Royal Britannia Hotel, and say Vodafone and Public Health England have declined to participate, funnily enough. And then on Friday, I shall be in Edinburgh at the Place Hotel. I shall stay in Scotland for the weekend because I believe there is a 5G rally in Edinburgh. And of course, Edinburgh and Glasgow are both designated as smart cities, and they are well down that path. So, you know, London, Edinburgh and Glasgow are the epitome of total surveillance. And that total surveillance is about to go on acid with the rollout of 5G. Then in the final week of the tour, I kick off in Glasgow. That's Monday week. Then on to Belfast on Tuesday, and then a day for travelling back between Belfast and the UK. And then on Thursday in Swansea, and the tour wraps up in Cardiff on Friday, October the 11th. And the great thing is that out of these 5G Is It Safe events, groups are manifesting. The mailing lists for the events that were held in the first 2 weeks have already been sent out to all those who attended, and now the onus is very much on communities to resist this, to engage with your elected representatives on a cooperative basis, because it is clearly evident that the vast majority of people who are in elected office at the lower levels, i.e. local council, district council, county council, really are totally in the dark about 5G. But once their interest is piqued, and of course the presentation by the MP for Gower, Tonia Antoniazzi, in June, which is on YouTube, and I'll also put a link to that video under this today, then just even showing the first 5 minutes of that video, or sending the clip to a local representative, might just pique their interest. Because what we are finding is once they do realise the magnitude of the threat, then they're very quickly on board, and they're also very quick to realise that the government and the industry is doing everything it can to remove local participation in any decision-making associated with the rollout of 5G and beyond. And of course, right now, there's also the consultation that's underway, being put out by the Department for Culture, Media and Sport. And of course, this consultation is about removing even more of the local authority input regarding infrastructure being installed for 5G. And this includes a proposition that the height of masts be doubled up to 165 feet, where no planning permission is required at all. So, you know, this is a situation where it's going to affect your street. You can't even hide from it, you know, if you happen to be in one neighborhood as opposed to another, because the intention is that there will be 5G transmitter receivers every 100 to 150 meters or so. The LED streetlights will be rolled out, and of course those have issues themselves, but these will be the primary street furniture for the installation of the 5G transmitters. So yes, it's very interesting to see the trolls out. Obviously, the more impact we make, then the more the trolls target. And we should take that as a massive compliment, because what this shows is that we are having effect, and the intellectually challenged trolls who, one can only question what their motivation is or whose payroll they're on, but they come out of the woodwork in an attempt to undermine, but actually they serve to endorse, because it means that we are right above the target and absolutely on point. So, this is going to be my only live stream this week, because the tour is taking it out of me, I must confess. I think I can safely say it's probably the last time that I undertake a tour of this kind of intensity. But nonetheless, I'm gratified that, what is happening is that community groups are being spawned as a result of this. And, the evidence that I'm sharing is irrefutable, which is why you're not likely to see the industry or Public Health England either attending or participating in any of these events. So thank you so much for sharing with me this morning. Thank you so much for all of those people who have made the effort to come along to the 5G Is It Safe events to date. 9 events remaining. Of course, information and tickets available from my websites. That's ianrcrane.com and alternativeview.co.uk. So next live stream will be next Monday morning, where I shall be somewhere north of the border, preparing for the Glasgow event. So you have a great week, and if you're in the Yorkshire, Manchester or Edinburgh area, hope to see you at one of the 5G Is It Safe events. Take care and have a great week. Bye now.